Welcome to part 1 of the chapter Political Formations in the 18th Century. You may ask, what is the meaning of the 18th century? 18th century is the time period between 1700s till the beginning of the 1800s. You may also ask, what is the meaning of political formations? It means that new kingdoms, new states were being formed during this time period. During the 18th century, it was the reign of the later Mughals in the Indian subcontinent. Here on this slide, you can see a table. The first column is the name of the Mughal rulers. The second column is the time period of their reign, and the third column is the number of years that they reigned. Let's read the names of the Mughal rulers as we can see in the first column. Bahadur Shah the first, Jahandar Shah, Farrukh Siyar, Muhammad Shah, Ahmad Shah, Alamgir the second, Shah Alam the second, and Akbar Shah, and finally Bahadur Shah Jafar the second. What can we learn from the time period of the reign of all these later Mughals? We can see that Bahadur Shah the first started the reign in 1707, and the last of the later Mughals is Bahadur Shah Jafar the second, whose reign ended in 1857. So what is the difference? 1857 take away 1707, and that is a total of 150 years. So you can learn that the later Mughals reigned for 150 years. So we shall learn about 7 reasons which led to this fall of the great Mughal Empire in the hands of the later Mughals who reigned in the 18th century. So let's read all those lines which follow after, which are on the right side of the red curly bracket. There were 2 mistakes of the last great Mughal ruler Aurangzeb. There were 3 internal issues: weak successors of Aurangzeb, competition between the nobles, revolts from the peasants, and there were 2 attacks from the enemies on the outside. There were 2 external attacks. So 2 plus 3 plus 2 is equal to 7 reasons which led to the fall or the decline of the great Mughal Empire. On the following slides, we will learn about each of these issues in greater detail. On this slide, we will learn about the 2 mistakes of Aurangzeb, who was the last great Mughal ruler. The first mistake is intolerant laws. What does that mean? That means there were harsh laws. These laws were very difficult for the people. And therefore, what is the result? The people are unhappy. You can read that there were revolts in different parts of the subcontinent. And what's the second reason? The second reason is that Aurangzeb went for long wars in the Deccan. He fought long wars in the Deccan. And where is the Deccan? You can see a map of India, and that part of South India which is circled in black, that is the Deccan. So he left North India and came and fought the wars in the Deccan. So that's what the first point is. Absent from North India. And the second point is, because he fought those long wars, he weakened the military. You can see the 3 military generals, they don't look very happy. Alright, and the last point is, he also drained the treasury. That is, you can see a picture of money and gold on the slide. Well, all that money is coming from where? It's the tax money. He has taxed the rich and the poor in the country, got their money, but was needlessly and uselessly wasting all that money by fighting the long war in the Deccan. On this slide we will learn that not only before the 18th century, that is the last 25 years of Aurangzeb's reign, were there mistakes, but there were triple trouble on the inside during the 18th century. There were three troubles, three issues on the inside in the working of the Mughal Empire. And what are those three issues? Well, the first issue is Aurangzeb had weak successors. Well, what are the signs of their weakness and their inefficiency? The first sign is they could not control the powerful Mansabdar, that is the military, and the local chiefs. And the second sign of their weakness was the governors or the subedars. They controlled all the money and the military of the empire. So we can learn a very important lesson, that if your money and the military is not in the control of the ruler, the empire is going to fall. What is the second trouble from the inside? Competition among the nobles. Here are three ways that you can see the competition among the nobles. The first way is, there were two major groups of nobles called the Iranis and Turanis. The second one is that the later Mughal rulers were merely puppets in the hands of these nobles. And what did these nobles do? They killed two emperors. They blinded another two rulers. Can you see a picture of a puppet on the slide? What was the third sign of trouble within the Mughal Empire? Well, the third sign, let's read. Peasants and zamindars were unhappy because of increasing taxes. That is, they were giving money to the government. And where were all this money going? To fight all those long wars in the Deccan. Also, the local rulers or the chieftains wanted to keep their position of power. So, they helped the peasants to revolt in different parts of the empire. You can see on your right 3 peasants, and the third peasant is actually holding a placard saying revolt. So, we learned that there were trouble before the time of the later Mughals. There was trouble during their time, but there was also double trouble from the outside. Can you read the title of the slide? Double trouble from the outside. And what do I mean by that? There were invasions from their enemies. Let's read about the first invasion. Invasion by Nadir Shah, who was the ruler of Iran. And where is Iran? Can you see the map? And Iran, the country of Iran, is being circled in red. And you can see how far it is from India. So this ruler has traveled all the way from Iran, came and attacked India, and what did he do? Well, he attacked India in AD 1739. Then he took away all the wealth, the Kohinoor diamond, gold and silver, even the famous peacock throne built by Shah Jahan. He also killed large number of people of Delhi, which in other words is called, he massacred the people. And then as a result of all the deterioration that happened because of this attack, the Marathas kingdom from the south, they came up and they started to occupy that area. That's the last line. Marathas kingdom extends up to Delhi. On this slide, we will learn about another attack, another invasion by an enemy. Let's read. The invasion by Ahmed Shah Abdali, the ruler of Afghan. And where is Afghan? You can find it on the map. It is circled in red. It seems to be very close to India, unlike Iran, Well, what did Ahmed Shah Abdali do? He invaded North India 5 times. And it was during the Third Battle of Panipat, which was fought between Abdali and the Marathas, that the Marathas were defeated. And the Peshwa, whose name was Balaji Bajirao, he died of sadness seeing the ruins of the Maratha army. In this section of the chapter, we have learned about 7 causes of the fall, of the decline of the great Mughal Empire. And what are they? In summary, we learned that Aurangzeb, the last great Mughal ruler, he made 2 mistakes. And there were 3 issues on the inside of the great Mughal Empire. There were weak successors. There was competition between the nobles. The third was the revolt from the peasants. There were also 2 invasions from foreign enemies. Welcome to another lesson for the chapter Political Formation in the 18th Century. On this slide, we can see that there are 2 maps of India. And what are these maps all about? To know that, we have to look at the box at the bottom of the slide, which reads, Rise and Fall of the Mughal Empire. That's right, these 2 maps are talking about the Mughal Empire. Well, how are these 2 maps different? Well, one map talks about the Mughal Empire during the year 1707. That's the beginning of the 18th century. And the other map talks about the Mughal Empire during the year 1760. That's about the time of the Third Battle of Panipat, as you can remember from the last class. Let's read what the emperors during the 18th century, during the beginning of the 18th century, were saying to themselves. Well, they were saying, wow, my kingdom is huge. Just look at the size of my kingdom. It covers almost the whole of India. But by the time of the 1760, they were saying to themselves, oh no, the kingdom has become so small. And do you remember why? From the previous lesson, we learned about 7 mistakes that had happened during the 18th century, which led to the decline, the fall, to the entire Mughal Empire being broken up into smaller pieces. And this has led to the emergence of independent states, and that's what this lesson is all about. One can imagine what the headlines during the year 1760 would read like. It would read something like this, that the mighty Mughal Empire has broken up into a number of independent regional states, and the prominent among these provinces were Hyderabad, Awadh and Bengal. Now, we can read about some common features about these provinces. These were powerful but independent states. Yes, they kept their relation to the Mughal Emperor, but they tried to maintain some level of independence. The rulers of these provinces were officials of the empire with very high rank, and they enjoyed trust and confidence of the emperors. So in this lesson, we shall look at the first province, which is Hyderabad, and how it became independent of the Mughal rule. Who is this person that we see on the slide? Hi, welcome. My name is Asif Jha. You can call me AJ. Hey AJ, can you tell us a little about yourself? Well, I am the ruler of the entire province of Hyderabad. Friends, just to be clear, that this Hyderabad that we are talking about is not the city of Hyderabad that we know today. To be clear, we can look at the map of India of that time, and we can see that there's a green colored portion, and that area is the entire province of Hyderabad that AJ ruled. Well, AJ, can you tell us how did you become the ruler of this province? Let's read what AJ says. On the right, starting from the right, I won the trust of the Mughal Emperor Farooq Siyar. I was an important member of his court because of my Zat rank, Z-A-T rank, and I had a Zat rank of 7,000. That's a very high rank, AJ. Well, my job was to take care of the affairs, the political and the financial affairs of Hyderabad. Well, the nobles of that time were not doing their job, so I took over the political command and became the ruler of Hyderabad. Yay! And next, you will read about my two-part strategy to make my position so strong that no one could defeat me, ever. Yes, AJ, tell us the two-part strategy that made you so strong and powerful. Well, first, I transferred good soldiers from North India to South India. And second, I appointed officials with very high ranks, also called mansabdars, and their salary came from the land assigned to them, which is called Jagir. I became so powerful that I even got the title of Nizam. Hence my new name is NUAJ, Nizam ul Asif Jah. Nice. I've worked independent of the Mughal Empire. Well, AJ, it looks like as if everything was going well for you. No, it was not. Just look at the map and you can see a yellow portion of the map. And what is that all about? That is the state of the Marathas. And what are they saying? Let's read. Marathas and Nayaks attack the Nizams. That's right. The Nizams were constantly engaged in a power struggle against the Marathas and Nayaks of that time. To summarize, in this lesson we learned how Hyderabad province became independent of the Mughal rule. And it was all thanks to NUAJ, Nizam ul Asif Jah. Welcome to another lesson for the chapter Political Formation in the 18th Century. In the last class, we learned about one of the old Mughal provinces called Hyderabad, which became powerful and then became independent of Mughal rule. Well, in this lesson, we will learn how Awadh, another old Mughal province, became independent of Mughal rule. On this slide, we will learn about the province of Awadh. But where is Awadh? Well, can you see the map? And you can see that Awadh is circled in red. And where is it? It is located in the Lucknow region. And what is that region known for? It was a very prosperous area and it has the fertile plain of the Ganges. Can you see those blue lines crisscrossing the region of Lucknow? Those rivers are what makes that region very fertile. And thirdly, it is smack in the middle of a main trade route between North India and Bengal. Do you know where Bengal is located? You can see it on the map. It is circled in yellow. These are some of the reasons why the province of Awadh became very powerful during the Mughal reign. On this slide, we are going to learn about the Subedar who became the ruler of Awadh. Can you see the picture of a man on the slide? Well, let's go and find out who he is. Hi, who are you? Hello, you can call me Mask, short for Muhammad Amin Saadat Khan. Hello, Mask. Can you tell us how did you become the Subedar of Awadh and what was the journey to become the ruler of Awadh like? Well, in AD 1722, I was appointed as a Subedar by the Mughal Emperor. And then, from that time till AD 1739, my only goal was to reduce the control of the Mughal emperor in the region of the Awadh. And by AD 1740, I was appointed as Minister of Awadh, and then I made Awadh totally independent of Mughal control. So it took you 18 years to become the ruler of Awadh. That's awesome. On this slide, we will learn how did Mask Muhammad Amin Saadat Khan make Awadh independent of Mughal rule. You remember that he was made the Subedar by the emperor himself? Now point number 1 talks about the extent of his control on the region of Awadh. He was responsible for political, financial and military affairs of that region. We also know that the Awadh region cut ties with the Mughal emperor but had friendly relations. And how did he do that? Point number 3, he paid money, tribute money called Nazar. Looks like Mask wants to tell us something. Let's read. To show the people how great I am, I must keep some titles. That's right. Let's read point number 4 and 5 about the titles that he adopted. Well, he got a Persian title for governor, which is Nasim, which later changed to Nawab, and he also adopted another title called Burhan al-Mulk. We can learn about some details about how did Mask make Awadh independent. Well, for one, he cut down the number of the Jagirdars appointed by the emperor. The Jagirdars were the revenue officers. So, he cut down the number of those officers appointed by the emperor, and then he could control the financial situation in the region himself. Alright, point number 2 is saying that the state depended on loans from local banks and Mahajans. Well, how did the state pay off those loans? Point number 3, the state also got money from farmers who paid a fixed sum of money, and these farmers were called Ijaradars. Point number 4, the people also gave taxes to the state. And soon, the money lenders used their power in the wrong way and cheated the state. In this lesson, we learned how Hyderabad, the old Mughal province, became independent of Mughal rule. Well, it was all thanks to Nawab Burhan al-Mulk, also called Mask Muhammad Amin Saadat Khan. Hello, welcome to another lesson for the chapter Political Formation in the 18th Century. In the previous classes, we were learning about Hyderabad and Awadh, two Mughal provinces. How did they become powerful and independent of the Mughal rule? In this lesson, we will learn about Bengal becoming independent of Mughal rule. On this slide, we will learn about how did the province of Bengal look like at that time. Let's read. The territory of the Bengal province comprised of modern-day states. And what are they? There are 6 states. So the first one is West Bengal, Bangladesh, parts of Assam, Orissa, Bihar and Jharkhand. Look at the map of India and you will find a white arrow pointing towards the province of Bengal. In this lesson, we learned how Bengal, another Mughal province, became independent of Mughal rule, and what are the 2 factors which led to its decline. In this lesson, we learned how Bengal, another Mughal province, became independent of Mughal rule, and what are the 2 factors which led to its decline. In this lesson, we learned how Bengal, another Mughal province, became independent of Mughal rule, And what are the two factors which led to its decline? In this lesson, we learned how Bengal, another Mughal province, became independent of Mughal rule, and what are the two factors which led to its decline. In this lesson, we learned how Bengal, another Mughal province, became independent of Mughal rule, and what are the two factors which led to its decline. On this slide, we are going to learn about the rise of the province of Bengal, and on the next slide, we are going to learn about its fall. Well, let's start reading the title of this slide. How did the province of Bengal become independent? The key person who helped Bengal province to become powerful and independent was Murshid Quli Khan. So let's learn a few more details about how he rose to power. To begin with, he was appointed as the Naib to the governor of Bengal. That's point number one. He rose in power and controlled all the resources, especially the money of the state. You can see a graph on the right. It has a green background, and you can notice that the yellow arrow is rising and rising. What does that mean? It means that Murshid Quli Khan's power and control in the state of Bengal, province of Bengal, was always increasing. To further his control, he did something else. What's that? Let's read point number 2. He transferred all the revenue officials which were appointed by the Mughal Empire to Orissa. You can see a picture of an accountant who is saying, "We don't want to be transferred." It looks like Murshid Quli Khan did not listen to them because he wanted more and more control over the finances, the wealth of the state. Let's read point number 3 to know the new ideas to increase the money in the state. Well, the people had to pay rent for the land, but the people, they don't have any money, so the people sold their lands to the zamindars. Now, even the zamindars had to pay rent for the land, but without money in their hand, they began to borrow loans from the banks and money lenders. You can see a graph on the right, and what's the title of that graph? It's called People's Money. And where is the arrow pointed? The yellow arrow is pointing down. What does that mean? That means that the people had less and less money in their hands because of the new ideas or policies, financial policies that were implemented by Murshid Quli Khan. How did the province of Bengal become weak? Or, in other words, what are the events which led to the fall of the province of Bengal? On the slide, we can read the first significant event, which is continuous attacks from the Marathas from AD 1740. Can you see the map of India? And there's a yellow portion, and can you read the name of that yellow portion? It said Maratha Confederacy. And what are the Maratha army saying? Attack Bengal. We can read about the second event which was not good for the province of Bengal. The English East India Company got entry into the state of Bengal. Well, they entered into the revenue collection, they used the banks of the rich Jats, and they also got the right to trade in the Bengal province. You can see a man holding money in his hand, and he is saying, "We would love to collect your revenue, all your money will be in our hands." And on the right is an English trading officer. He is saying, "Thank you for the right to trade in Bengal." In this lesson, we learned how Bengal, another Mughal province, became independent of Mughal rule? And what are the two factors which led to its decline? Welcome to a new section for the chapter Political Formations in the 18th Century. In this class, some of the topics to cover are the common features of the old Mughal provinces and the Watan Jagirs of the Rajputs. But first, a quick review of what are the old Mughal provinces that we are talking about. Well, do you remember that there was the big Mughal Empire and then it got split into smaller, powerful but independent states? And what are their names? You can see on the slide, they are Hyderabad, Awadh and Bengal. Well, what are some of the features that are common to all of these old Mughal provinces? So let's look at the first point. It says that the nobles were responsible to create the larger states, and the Jagirdari system made them wealthy, and this helped them to establish state authority. In the second point, we're talking about Ijaradari system. In this system, the Nawabs, the rulers of these provinces, they didn't appoint the tax collectors who were chosen by the Mughal emperor. Instead, they used their own revenue farmers. Ijaradari system was not approved by the Mughals, and it spread all over India by 1700 AD. What is the third common feature of the old Mughal provinces? Well, you can remember that there was a rise of banking and money lending. Why is that? It's because there was more emphasis on money than good governance. And as a consequence, small landowners lost their land because they could not pay the rent. And banks had relations with both the Europeans and the Nawabs. In this section, we are going to look at the Watan Jagirs of the Rajputs, which in a sense is that the Mughals and the Rajputs were neighbors, and sometimes they had a good relation and sometimes they had a bad relation. On this slide, we will see how the Mughals and the Rajputs, they had good relations. Well, for one, the Mughals respected, honored the defeated Rajputs. Can you see the Rajputs on the slide? Let's listen to what they are saying. We were defeated by the Mughals, but they treat us well. Phew. In addition, the Mughals allowed them to rule their land. Land was assigned to them. Watan Jagirs, that's what it means when the land is assigned to the Rajputs. Temples and Brahmins also were given land as gifts. That was called Inams and Miras. The Rajputs also enjoyed freedom to rule on their own. What is that called? It's a new word, probably. For many of you, it's called autonomy. So in this context, it means that the Rajput rulers had the full power. They had full control over the affairs of their land. And last point is that some Rajput groups, they formed friendships with other Rajputs, and this helped them to control even the nearby regions. But why did the Mughal rulers have such good relation with the Rajputs? Can you see a Mughal ruler is thinking aloud? Yeah, let's hear what he is saying. They don't realize, that's who, the Rajputs don't realize that we, the Mughals, are just expanding our borders. Ha 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 ha. The relation between the Rajputs and the Mughals were not smooth all the time. There were times of bad relations also, and let's look into that. The first point says Rajputs were trying to form their own groups or political parties in the Mughal court. Well, in your textbook, the word used is factions, factional politics. Here are, on the slide, you can see some Rajputs, and they seem to be discussing something. Let's listen. One Rajput is saying, we will try to make new political parties within the Mughal courts. Oh no! They're trying to cause division in the Mughal courts. Point number 2 is Aurangzeb. Remember, he's the last great Mughal. He had both good and bad relations with the Rajputs. He seems to be a little worried about the whole thing. Let's listen to what he has to say. The Rajputs are not very keen on keeping good relations with me. You'll see what I mean. Before we go any further, we must take a tour of the land of the Rajputs so that we are well acquainted with some of their popular and well-known places. The legend has the names of 5 strategic locations in the land of the Rajputs. And what are they? Let's read. Marwar, also called as Jodhpur, Malwa, Jaipur, Amber and Agra. Can you find Marwar on the map? It's got the number 1 written next to it. Well, if you find number 2 and you can read Malwa written below number 2, find 3 on the map. What's written right next to it? Jaipur. Can you find 4? What's written below it? Amber. And 5 is Agra. So remember the names and locations of these places because they'll come very frequently in your text and in this class. Let's look at an example of the good relation between Aurangzeb and the Rajputs. Look at what Aurangzeb is saying. My friends, Jaswant and Jay, where are you? I, Maharaja Jaswant Singh, am in the Jodhpur Marwar region. I, Raja Jai Singh, am in the Amber region. I will rule over Malwa region too. Thanks. Here's an example of the bad relation between Aurangzeb and the Rajput. This happens after Maharaja Jaswant Singh died. So let's read. Now our Rajput king died in 1678. So let's fight the Mughals. Uh-oh, they are now our enemies. So Aurangzeb is saying, oh, fighting me, is it? I will invade Marwar and impose taxes on them. It's also called Jizya. Well, from then on, the Mughals continued to interfere. That is, they controlled the internal affairs of the Rajput states. Here we will see another example of a good relation between the Mughal ruler Aurangzeb and the Rajputs. Can anyone hear a voice from the Marwar region? Well, let's listen very closely. Aurangzeb, this is Ajit, son of Maharaja Jaswant Singh. Do you remember my father? Well, I'd like to be friends with you. I like to rule Jodhpur, which is the Marwar region, and Gujarat, south of this region. And Aurangzeb says, sure, good idea. Well, Aurangzeb's reign ended in 1707, and after that began the period of the later Mughals. Do you remember what we learned in our classes? That also was a period of growth for the Rajputs. Let's listen to the Mughals discussing their situation. Maharaja Jai Singh, what happened in AD 1722? Well, earlier I was the governor of Malwa. Now Jaipur is my capital. And also I am the Subedar of Agra. Who else were the neighbors of the Rajputs? Well, below the Rajput lands were the Maratha Confederacy. And as a show of their strength, they were able to resist the attack of the Marathas. So let's listen to a Maratha ruler who wants to say something on this topic. Remember, we learned in the last class the Marathas attacked the Bengal province around AD 1740. And the Rajputs have a comment to say on this regard. But you can't defeat the Rajput principalities. We are too strong and resisted your attack. We have come to the end of the class, And some of the topics that were covered are the common features of the three old Mughal provinces, Hyderabad, Bengal and Awadh, and the Watan Jagirs of the Rajputs. Welcome to another class on the chapter Political Formations in the 18th Century. From the previous classes, you may have understood the term political formations. The title of the slide says Political Scenario in the AD 1700s. You know that the great Mughal Empire enjoyed political dominance or supreme control in the Indian subcontinent. But what happened by the 18th century? It faced steady decline and broke into several small but powerful political states or kingdoms. Can you see the map and identify the names of these kingdoms? The emergent kingdoms are the three old Mughal provinces of Bengal, Awadh and Hyderabad, the Rajputs, the Sikhs, the Marathas and the Jats. For this lesson, we will be focusing on the Sikh state. Here on this slide, we can see the timeline of events. The timeline begins with the year 1606 and it ends at 1799. That's almost 200 years of political history of the Sikhs. So let's begin with the first key political event, which is the Mughal Emperor Jahangir executes Guru Arjan for giving shelter to Prince Khusrau, who rebelled against his own father. Next, almost 70 years later, in AD 1675, the ninth Guru, Guru Tegh Bahadur, martyred during the reign of Aurangzeb for refusing to convert to Islam. And the 10th final human Sikh Guru is Guru Gobind Singh, who is appointed as the leader of the Sikhs. After almost 25 years as their leader, Guru Gobind Singh introduces the institution of the Khalsa. In 1708, Guru Gobind Singh is killed and succeeded by Bandhu Bahadur. In 1715, Bahadur is captured and within a year he is executed. And by the end of the 18th century, that is in 1799, Maharaja Ranjit Singh has established the capital of the Sikh state in Lahore. The Khalsa was a very important institution to the Sikhs. Let's learn a few more details about it. It was introduced in 1699 by Guru Gobind Singh, and the destiny of the Khalsa was to rule. Its slogan was Raj Karega Khalsa. On this slide, we will learn about the coins. The coins were an important step towards gaining independence from the Mughal rule. Under Bandhu Bahadur, coins were minted, which helped to declare their sovereignty. Coins were made in the name of Guru Nanak and Guru Gobind Singh. In AD 1765, coins were issued again. On this slide, we will learn about the organization of the Sikh community, which helped them seize their independence from the Mughals. By the later half of the 18th century, the Sikhs organized themselves into Jatas and later into 12 missals. A missal was a political unit. All members of the missal were united under a single chief. The Sikhs also formed the Dal Khalsa, which is the army of the Sikhs. Another important feature of the organization of the Sikh community is the Rakhi. Can you read point number 4? It says, the Rakhi is the system to give protection to the cultivators in return for a fifth of their produce. And finally, it was Maharaja Ranjit Singh who united the Sikhs to form the Sikh state in Punjab and established Lahore as its capital. In this lesson, we learned how the Sikhs formed a political state and seized their independence from the Mughals. Welcome to another lesson for the chapter Political Formations in the 18th Century. In the previous classes, we were looking at the political scenario in the Indian subcontinent in AD 1700s, which in other words is the formation of new political states like the 3 Mughal provinces, the Rajputs, the Sikhs, and for today we are going to look into the Maratha Empire. The map on the right shows you the reign of the Marathas, the region which the Marathas controlled. But what do those arrows mean? Can you see that the arrows are starting from the Maratha regions and going outside? So it means that the Maratha Empire was expanding into new territories. On this slide, you will see the list of the topics for today's lesson. So first, we'll look into the bold beginnings of the Maratha Empire, and then the powerful Peshwas who took control in the early 1700s, and a massive expansion drive by the Maratha Empire in the mid 1700s, and the Maratha administration. On this slide, we are going to learn about the bold beginning of the Maratha Empire. The first question is, when was the Maratha Empire founded? The empire was founded during the reign of Aurangzeb, who was the last great Mughal ruler. And who was the founder of the Maratha Empire? Shivaji. Who is Shivaji? We can read from the second point that he is the son of Shahaji Bhonsle, who was a Sardar under the Nizam Shahi rulers of Ahmednagar. When did he live? He lived from AD 1627 to 1680. Well, we learnt about who started the Maratha Empire, or who founded the Maratha Empire, and when was it founded. And now we are going to learn more about how was it founded. Well, from 4a we can know that Shivaji carved out a stable kingdom with the support of warrior families. And what are they called? Deshmukhs. He helped them to become a strong military force. Now there's a secret to this. You're going to learn about a new technique. It's called the guerrilla technique. He used the guerrilla technique to fight the Mughals. But what was all the motivation behind this? The motivation was that there were peasants. They were the poor class in the society, and they were oppressed by the Mughal Watandars. Do you remember who are the Watandars? They are the landowners who were appointed by the Mughal emperor. I'm sure you'd like to understand what is the guerrilla technique. It is the technique of hiding and then striking suddenly to defeat the enemy. Can you see the picture on the right? There are 2 soldiers. The one in blue is out in the open. But can you see another soldier that is hiding behind the tree and a bush? So the blue soldier is thinking, I can't see you. But the other one is saying, I can see you. On this slide, we are going to learn about the timeline of the reign of the Peshwas. The first point says that Shivaji died in 1680. His son came into power and ruled for 9 years. and then the stepbrother came in and ruled for 10 years. But after that, the effective leadership was taken over by the Chitpavan Brahmins. They were also called the Peshwas, which means Prime Minister. So, the Peshwas or these Prime Ministers were the ones who helped the successors of Shivaji to rule. Now let's look at the timeline, and the first time period is 1730 to 1720. That's for 7 years. Who is the Peshwa? Balaji Vishwanath. He's the 6th Peshwa. Okay, but that's the first Prime Minister of the Maratha Empire. After him, for another 20 years up till 1740, the next Peshwa is Baji Rao the First. After him, another 20 years up till 1761. Balaji Bajirao the First. He's the 8th Peshwa who died after the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761. On this slide, we are going to learn some more details of the powerful Peshwas. From the first point, and from the previous slide, we have also learned that Balaji Vishwanath was the first Prime Minister, and he reigned from 1730 to 1720. The capital of the Maratha Empire was at Pune, and after the death of Vishwanath, the Peshwaship became hereditary. So the next Peshwa was his son Bajirao the First. In the third point, we are going to learn about the extent of the empire under his son. Well, the empire of the Marathas extended from Malwa to Bundelkhand, but did not include the territory of the Nizam of Hyderabad. And Bajirao the First has, to his credit, launched direct attacks against the Portuguese and captured the island of Salsette and Bassein. On your right, you can see a picture, a map, which shows the island of Salsette and its location, which is on the coast of Maharashtra. The fourth point is that the Marathas Confederacy was formed by 1730, and it included the chiefs like Bhonsles, Gaikwads, Scindias and Holkars. What is a confederacy, you may ask? It is a union of many chiefs towards a common purpose. On this slide, we are going to learn about the massive expansion of the Maratha Empire, which happened in the mid-18th century. Bajirao died in 1740, and he was succeeded by his son Balaji Bajirao. In the second point, we are going to see how did Balaji increase the territory of the Maratha Empire. We can read that he reconquered the territories of Shivaji, and when Maratha chief Shahu died in 1749, the Peshwa took over. He also invaded the Bengal province and took over the Orissa area. In AD 1751, he invaded the Hyderabad province and took over those territories. And the Rajput state of Malwa was integrated into the Maratha Empire. He captured Delhi in 1753, annexed Punjab in 1758. However, the end of the Maratha Empire, as we read in the point 3, began after the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761. Now let's look into the Maratha administration. The first point reads that the system of administration was inherited from Shivaji. We have also learned that Bajirao the First was able to form a group of united Maratha chiefs. What was it called? The Maratha Confederacy. We can learn a little more about these chiefs in point number 2. The Maratha chiefs were called Sardars, and some of the most notable were Scindia of Gwalior Gaikwad of Baroda and Bhonsle of Nagpur. The map on the right shows you how far these three places are from each other. The first place is Gwalior, the second is Vadodara, which is the new name for Baroda, and the third place is Nagpur. Well, coming back to the second point, they had enormous resources and powerful armies. We may also ask, how did the rulers of the Maratha Empire get so much money? Where did the money come from? Well, that's what point number 3 talks about. The money came mainly from the land. So, land revenue was the main source of income. And the revenue of the land was fixed upon the survey and assessment of the land. Which means that you survey the land to see how big it is, and then you assess whether the land is fertile enough or whether the land will be able to give you enough produce and give you enough revenue. The land ownership remained feudal in nature. On this slide, we are going to learn a few more details about the Maratha administration. Point number 4 reads that land revenue was collected from lands that were not directly under the control of the Marathas. That is, they gave money in exchange for protection from their enemies. There were 2 types of revenue collection. One was the Chauth, where you paid a quarter of the revenue, and the other was the Sardesh Mukhi, where you paid a tenth of the revenue. Point number 5 is that under the Maratha administration, new trade routes developed. The silk that was produced in Chanderi was sold at Pune, the capital of the Maratha Empire. And point number 6 says that Burhanpur earlier only had limited trade with Agra and Surat, and now it traded with 4 different places, with Pune, Nagpur, Lucknow and Allahabad. On this map, you can see the location of the places that we have just read about in the previous slide. And what is one thing that you can observe from this map? That the places where trade was taking place were very far apart. And this shows the extent of the development of the trade under the Maratha administration. Here we can see the summary of the lesson. The first topic that we covered was the bold beginnings of the Maratha Empire. Second topic, powerful Peshwas. Third, the massive expansion of the Maratha Empire. And fourth, the Maratha administration. Welcome to the last lesson for the chapter Political Formations in the 18th Century. In this class, you're going to learn about the Jat community. On this slide, we are going to learn about the region which was under their influence and some places that were under their control. In brief, we can say that the Jat community was a warrior community based around Delhi and Mathura. Look at the map on your left. The region or the area that the Jat community dominated is circled in red. The map on your right takes a closer look at this region. There are 6 places that are plotted on the map. Take a moment to familiarize yourself with these places, their names and their locations. So starting from the north, we can see that the places are Panipat, Delhi, Balabgarh, Mathura, Bharatpur and Agra. On this slide, we are going to look at the timeline of the rulers of the Jat community. Well, starting from the left, we can see that the year 1699 was a very important year for this community. Why? We read that Gokul Jat, their ruler, led the revolt against the Mughals in that year. The following year, sadly, Gokul Jat dies, and Rajaram continues as the ruler and continued the rebellion against the Mughals. The next ruler is Churaman, who acquired control of Delhi and Agra. However, it was only under the rule of Suraj Mal that Bharatpur became strong. His legacy was continued by his son Jahir Shah, who was able to keep an army of hired Sikhs and Maratha warriors to fight the Mughals and to claim dominance in that region. On this slide, we are going to learn a few more details about the Jat community. The first point reads that they were prosperous in agriculture. For their community, important centers of trade were Panipat and Balabghad. They were not only interested in agriculture and trade, but they were also great builders. Just look at the Bharatpur fort, which was constructed in traditional style. Take a moment also to look at the Garden Palace Fort at Dig. The architecture of the Jat building is modeled on the buildings during the time of Shah Jahan.